I pressed my hand over my mouth so hard my lips started to bleed, forcing myself not to scream. The heavy velvet curtains of the library were the only thing separating me from the monster I had married. Through the sliver of a gap, I saw Sebastian pouring a clear, viscous liquid into my favorite porcelain decanter, the one he insisted I drink from every night to soothe my nerves. His mother, Octavia, stood by the fireplace, her silhouette sharp and predatory against the dying embers. "Are you sure this dosage is sufficient, Sebastian?" she asked, her voice as cold as cracking ice. "We cannot afford for her to wake up during the evaluation tomorrow. The doctors need to see a woman who has completely lost her mind, not a groggy wife." Sebastian laughed, a low, rumbling sound that used to make my knees weak, but now made my stomach churn with terror. "Don't worry, Mother. After tonight's cup, Cordelia won't just look insane, she won't even remember her own name. Once she signs the power of attorney over to me in her confusion, Blackwood Manor will finally be ours, and she'll be comfortable enough in that state facility." My legs gave way, sliding silently against the wall. The man I loved, the man I trusted with my life, wasn't taking care of me. He was erasing me, and tomorrow there would be no escape. To understand how I ended up trembling behind a curtain in my own home, terrified of my husband and his mother, you have to understand who I was before Sebastian. My name is Cordelia, and for most of my life, I was defined by two things: my loneliness and my inheritance. I was the only child of the Blackwood dynasty. When my father passed away, he left me everything: the sprawling estate, the investments, the art collection, but he didn't leave me with the one thing I desperately craved: family. I was 36, surrounded by antique furniture and silent servants, yearning for a connection that felt real. Then came Sebastian. We met at a charity gala in the city. He wasn't like the other men who circled me, sharks in tuxedos looking for a payout. Sebastian was an architect, passionate about restoration. He looked at me, not through me. He had these intense, emerald eyes that seemed to see all my hidden insecurities and promised to protect them. He was charming, articulate, and seemingly independent. He didn't need my money. He had his own firm. Or so he said. We married 6 months later. It was a whirlwind, a fairy tale. I felt like I was finally breathing after holding my breath for decades. But looking back now, I see the red flags I was too blinded by love to notice. The way he subtly suggested we dismiss old staff members because they were taking advantage of me. The way he insisted on managing the estate's finances so I wouldn't have to worry my pretty head. The nightmare didn't start with violence. It started with silence. About a year into our marriage, I began to feel off. It started with headaches, a persistent throbbing behind my eyes that made the world look slightly blurry. Then came the fatigue. I would wake up after 10 hours of sleep feeling like I hadn't rested at all. My limbs felt heavy, like I was wading through molasses. "You look pale, darling," Sebastian would say, his voice dripping with concern as he stroked my hair. "You've been doing too much. The stress of the estate is getting to you." He suggested I see a doctor, a friend of his, Dr. Sterling. I trusted him. Dr. Sterling ran some basic tests, frowned at his clipboard, and diagnosed me with early onset nervous exhaustion and potentially a hereditary chemical imbalance. He prescribed a regimen of pills and, crucially, rest, absolute rest. "No visitors, Cordelia," Sebastian said firmly, taking my phone from my hand. "Dr. Sterling says stimulation makes it worse. You need to disconnect to heal." That was the beginning of my isolation. Weeks turned into months. The headaches got worse. I started losing time. I would be sitting in the garden, and suddenly I would blink, and it would be dark. And I'd be standing in the kitchen with a knife in my hand, having no memory of how I got there. Sebastian was always there to save me. "Cordelia, give me the knife," he would whisper, terrified. "You were screaming at the maid again. Don't you remember?" I was, I would stammer, tears streaming down my face. "I don't remember screaming. I don't remember anything." "It's getting worse," he would sigh, looking at me with pity that felt like a slap. "You're becoming dangerous, my love." The turning point, or rather the acceleration of my hell, came when his mother, Octavia, moved in. Octavia was a woman made of steel wire and expensive perfume. She didn't walk, she glided. She had never liked me, I knew that. She thought I was soft. But when she arrived to help Sebastian care for me, the atmosphere in the house shifted from suffocating to sinister. Octavia took over the kitchen. She dismissed my cook, Mrs. Higgins, who had been with me since I was a child. She was stealing silver, Octavia claimed. I cried for days, but Sebastian insisted his mother was right. Octavia insisted on preparing all my meals and drinks personally. Special herbal blends, she called them, to cleanse the toxins. It was the tea. Every evening at 8 p.m., Octavia would bring me a cup of calming tea. It tasted bitter, masked by heavy honey and lemon, but I drank it because I wanted to get better. I wanted to be the wife Sebastian deserved. But every night, 30 minutes after the tea, the hallucinations would start. I would see shadows moving in the corners of the room. I would hear my dead father's voice calling my name from the attic. One night, I swore I saw spiders crawling out of the vanity mirror. I screamed until my throat was raw. Sebastian rushed in, held me down, and injected me with a sedative. "Shh, shh," he soothed. "It's just your mind playing tricks on you, Cordelia. You're sick." By the 6th month, I was a shell. I had lost 20 pounds, my skin was gray, I barely left my bedroom. I truly believed I was losing my mind. I started writing goodbye letters to people I hadn't seen in years, only to find the next morning that the letters were gibberish, scrawls of ink that made no sense. "See?" Sebastian showed me the papers. "You can't even write a sentence anymore." But deep down, in the tiny, unpoisoned corner of my brain, a survival instinct was flickering. It was a Tuesday. I remember the day because it was raining so hard the windows were rattling. I had pretended to drink the tea. Octavia had been watching me like a hawk, but a crash in the hallway, a vase falling, had distracted her for a split second. In that second, I poured the contents of the cup into the potted fern next to my bed. I feigned drowsiness. I let my eyelids droop. I slurred my words. "I'm so tired, Octavia." "Good," she snapped, taking the empty cup. "Sleep, you useless girl." She left the room and locked the door from the outside. That click of the lock was a sound I had grown used to, but tonight, without the drug clouding my mind, it sounded like a prison sentence. I waited an hour. The fog that usually enveloped my brain wasn't there. I felt weak, yes, but I was lucid. I was awake. I got out of bed. My legs were shaky, but they held. I went to the fern. The leaves where I had poured the tea were already turning black and curling up. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the drafty house. They are poisoning me. The realization didn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It hit me like a slow, crushing weight. The memory loss, the hallucinations, the weakness, it wasn't madness. It was toxicity. I needed proof. I needed to get out. I crept to the window. We were on the 2nd floor. There was a trellis covered in ivy that led down to the garden. I hadn't climbed anything in 20 years, but adrenaline is a powerful fuel. I opened the window silently. The wind howled, masking the sound. I climbed out into the storm. The rain soaked me instantly, plastering my nightgown to my shivering body. I slipped twice, scraping my hands raw against the stone facade, but I made it to the ground. I ran toward the garage. If I could get to my car, I could drive to the police station. But when I got to the garage, the doors were locked. Not just closed, padlocked. I frantically searched for a rock to smash a window, but then I saw the light on in the library. The library was in the east wing, overlooking the garden. The curtains were drawn, but there was a gap. I crept closer, hiding behind the rose bushes. I needed to know what they were doing. I needed to know why. That was when I heard it, the conversation from the beginning of my story. After tonight's cup, Cordelia won't just look insane, she won't even remember her own name. He was going to commit me tomorrow, a permanent facility. He would have power of attorney, he would sell Blackwood Manor, or worse, let Octavia rule it. I couldn't go back to my room. If they found me gone, they would hunt me down. But I couldn't leave the grounds on foot. The estate was miles from the nearest town, and the main gates were electric. I didn't have the code. Sebastian had changed it for my safety. I was trapped. I huddled in the gardening shed, shivering, wet, and terrified. I tried to think. Who could I call? My phone was gone. The landlines in the house were monitored. Then I remembered the old service phone. My father used to keep an emergency landline in the gardening shed for the groundskeeper. It was an ancient rotary thing, covered in dust. Did it still work? I fumbled in the dark, knocking over pots and rakes. My fingers found the cold plastic of the receiver. I lifted it to my ear. A dial tone, a beautiful, steady dial tone. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. Who? The police? Sebastian was charming. He knew the local sheriff. He would say I was having an episode. He would show them Dr. Sterling's falsified reports. They would bring me right back to him. I needed someone powerful, someone outside their circle. I racked my brain. My lawyer had retired. My friends had been pushed away. Then a name surfaced from the depths of my memory. Not a friend, not exactly. Years ago, before I met Sebastian, I had set up a scholarship fund, the Theodora Foundation, named after my grandmother. I didn't manage it directly, but I remembered reading letters from the recipients. There was one boy, a young man. He had written me every month for 4 years, even though the scholarship was anonymous. He eventually found out who I was and sent a thank you note that I had kept in my jewelry box until Sebastian made me throw clutter away. He had become a doctor, a specialist in toxicology and psychiatry. He had written, "If you ever need anything at all, I owe you my future." His name was Julian Vance, Dr. Julian Vance. Was he still in the city? Would he even remember me? It had been 10 years. I dialed information. Connect me to Dr. Julian Vance's office or home. Please, it's an emergency. The operator connected me to a hospital switchboard. It was 2 a.m. Doctor? Vance is on call, but he is in a consult, the nurse said. Tell him it's Cordelia Blackwood, I whispered, my teeth chattering. Tell him the tea is bitter, please. It was a nonsensical message, but I hoped it sounded desperate enough. I waited. Minutes felt like hours. The rain hammered on the shed roof. Hello? A deep, tired voice. This is Dr. Vance. Julian, I sobbed. It's Cordelia, please. I don't know who else to trust. They're killing me. I spilled everything in a frantic rush. The symptoms, the tea, the conversation I overheard, the commitment hearing tomorrow. Who is the evaluating doctor tomorrow? Julian asked, his voice sharp and alert. I don't know. Someone Sebastian hired. Dr. Eris, I think. Eris, Julian cursed. He's a hired gun. He'll sign anything for a price. There was a pause. Cordelia, listen to me. You cannot run. If you run, they will find you and use it as proof of your instability. You have to go back to your room. No, I cried. I can't. You must. You have to play the part one last time, but do not drink anything. Do not eat anything. When the doctors arrive tomorrow, I will be there. How? Sebastian won't let you in. Leave that to me. I have authority in this district now. Just survive until morning. Can you do that? I think so. Cordelia, his voice softened. You saved my life once. I'm coming to save yours. I promise. I hung up. The walk back to the house was the hardest thing I've ever done. Climbing back up the trellis with shaking, frozen limbs was agony. I slipped into my room, dried myself as best I could with a towel, and hid the wet clothes deep in the hamper. I got into bed. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought it would wake the house. I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Every creak sounded like Sebastian coming to finish the job. Morning came with a gray, oppressive light. At 8 a.m., Octavia unlocked the door. She came in with a tray, toast and coffee. Eat, she commanded. The doctors will be here at 10. You look terrible. Perfect. I sat up. I pretended to take a sip of the coffee, then spat it back into the cup when she turned to open the wardrobe. I can't, I whined. My stomach. Fine, starve, she sneered. She pulled out a drab gray dress. Put this on. You need to look like the ghost you are. At 10 a.m., Sebastian came for me. He was dressed in a sharp navy suit, looking every bit the grieving, burdened husband. Come, darling, he said, offering his arm. The doctors are here to help you. He led me down the grand staircase. In the foyer, 3 men were waiting. One was Dr. Sterling, the traitor. Another was a short, sweaty man I assumed was Dr. Eris. And the third man was tall, with broad shoulders and piercing blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a pristine white coat, and unlike the others, he didn't look at Sebastian. He looked straight at me. Who is this? Sebastian asked, his smile faltering slightly. I only requested Dr. Eris. I am Dr. Vance, Julian said, his voice projecting authority that filled the cavernous hall. I am the chief of psychiatry at the state hospital. When a case involves the involuntary commitment of a high-profile individual like Mrs. Blackwood, state protocol requires an independent review by a senior official. New legislation. He lied. I knew he lied, but he did it so smoothly. Sebastian bristled. I wasn't informed of this. It's a formality, Julian said, stepping forward. He didn't smile. He looked at Sebastian with a cold, analytical gaze. Unless you have something to hide, Mr. Blackwood? Sebastian's jaw tightened. Of course not. My wife is very ill. We just want what's best for her. Excellent. Then let's begin. They led me into the drawing room. I sat on the sofa, huddled in my gray dress. Sebastian sat next to me, his hand gripping my knee tightly, a warning squeeze. Dr. Eris began asking questions. Mrs. Blackwood, do you know what year it is? I hesitated, playing the part, 2024. And do you know why you are here? Because I see things, I whispered. Sebastian nodded sadly at Dr. Eris. She hallucinates daily. She attacks the staff. I see. Dr. Eris scribbled on his pad. Classic paranoid schizophrenia with rapid onset. Wait, Julian's voice cut through the room. He stepped closer to me. He crouched down so he was at eye level. "Mrs. Blackwood. Cordelia. Look at me." I looked up. His eyes were kind, anchoring me. "Can you tell me about the tea?" Julian asked softly. The room went deadly silent. Sebastian stood up. "What tea? This is irrelevant." "Sit down, Mr. Blackwood," Julian snapped, not looking away from me. I asked the patient a question. "It's bitter," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Octavia brings it every night at 8. She says it's herbs, but it tastes like almonds and metal, and after I drink it, the walls start to melt." "Delusions," Octavia hissed from the doorway. "She's paranoid about her food." Julian stood up and reached into his medical bag. "Is that so? Well, paranoia is a mental state. Toxicology is a fact." He pulled out a syringe and a set of vials. If Mrs. Blackwood is suffering from schizophrenia, her blood work will be clean. If, however, she is suffering from anticholinergic poisoning, scopolamine perhaps, or a heavy metal compound, it will show up immediately. Sebastian's face lost all color. "You cannot touch her. I do not consent to this." "She is the patient," Julian said. "Cordelia, do you consent to a blood test?" "Yes," I said loudly. "I consent." Sebastian lunged. "No, this is a farce. Get out of my house." It happened in slow motion. Sebastian grabbed my arm, trying to pull me off the sofa, but Julian was faster. He stepped between us, shoving Sebastian back with surprising force. "Don't touch her," Julian growled. "Get out!" Sebastian screamed, his charming mask completely shattered, revealing the snarling animal beneath. "Mother, call security." "I already called the authorities," Julian said calmly, checking his watch. "They should be at the gate right now." As if on cue, the sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Sebastian looked at the window, then at me. The realization dawned on him. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was the prey. "You bitch," he whispered, staring at me with pure hatred. "You ungrateful, crazy bitch." "I'm not crazy, Sebastian," I said, standing up on my own. My legs were steady. "I was just lonely, and you used that. But I'm not lonely anymore." The police burst through the doors a moment later. Julian had been thorough. He hadn't just come based on my call. He had pulled Dr. Sterling's records overnight and found inconsistencies. He had brought a warrant. They found the vials in Octavia's room. They found the receipts for the chemicals in Sebastian's private safe. As they handcuffed Sebastian, he didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, defeated. But Octavia? She screamed. She screamed that I was a liar, a witch, that I had framed them. She was still screaming as they dragged her into the police cruiser. I stood on the porch of Blackwood Manor, the cold wind hitting my face. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel cold. I felt cleansed. Julian walked up beside me. He took off his coat and draped it over my shoulders. "You did it," he said softly. "No," I looked at him, tears finally spilling over, not from fear, but from relief. "You did. You came." He smiled, a genuine, boyish smile that reminded me of the letters from years ago. "You invested in me when I was nothing, Cordelia. You gave me a future. It was only right that I gave yours back to you." The aftermath was messy. The trial was long and publicized. The tabloids loved the story of the gaslight Harris, but I didn't hide. I testified. I looked Sebastian in the eye as the judge sentenced him to 20 years. I watched Octavia weep as she was led away. I filed for divorce, obviously. I fired the corrupt staff. I had the house swept for bugs and poisons. But more importantly, I stopped hiding in the shadows of my own life. I turned Blackwood Manor into something new. It's no longer a silent mausoleum. It's now the headquarters for the Theodora Foundation. We provide housing and scholarships for at-risk youth. The house is full of noise, laughter, and life. And Julian? He didn't just disappear back into his life. We became friends, real friends. We have dinner every Tuesday. He checks my blood pressure, and I check his ego. There is no romance yet. I need time to heal, to trust again. But there is a connection, a bond forged in the fire of that rainy night. I often think about that night in the shed, how close I was to giving up, how easy it would have been to just drink the tea and let the darkness take me. But I learned something that night. A miracle isn't always a lightning bolt from the sky. Sometimes, a miracle is a seed you planted 10 years ago without expecting it to grow. Sometimes, the person who saves you is the stranger you saved first. I look at the scar on my hand from climbing the trellis. It reminds me that I am a survivor. It reminds me that even when the people who are supposed to love you try to erase you, your truth is worth fighting for. Never ignore your gut. If you feel like something is wrong, it probably is. If you feel like you are disappearing, scream until someone hears you. And never, ever underestimate the power of a random act of kindness. It might just be the thing that saves your life down the road. I'm sharing this story because I know there are women out there who feel like they are losing their minds, who are being told they are too sensitive or crazy by their partners. Please, trust yourself. You know your own mind. Don't let anyone take your reality away from you. If this story touched you, or if you've ever felt like your intuition saved you from a bad situation, please hit the like button. It helps more people see this warning. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell notification so you never miss a story. And I want to ask you a question in the comments. If you found out a loved one was plotting against you, would you confront them immediately, or would you wait to gather evidence like I did? I read every comment. Stay safe and remember, you are stronger than you think.